Hello and welcome to another episode of the Horrorcast series. Today we're gonna talk about some really horrifying incidents that occurred in different parts of the United States. These stories are real-life incidents that we have gathered from different credible sources. And today we're gonna talk about two of these stories that are really gonna creep you out. So stay tuned until the end of the video, subscribe to the channel and like the video. This happened in October 2021 in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. My best friend Matt and I were just two city guys from DC, looking for a weekend to disconnect. We'd picked a less traveled trail, Little Devil's Stairs. Known to be steep, rocky and scenic, the plan was simple: hike up Saturday morning, camp overnight in the backcountry, loop back Sunday. We packed everything by the book: layers, compasses, printed maps, power banks, bear sprays. We weren't careless, we weren't thrill seekers, we were just tired of the city noise. The hike started beautifully: cold but clear skies, the crunch of leaves underfoot, golden light peeking through dense pines. We joked about the name Little Devil's Stair, made up horror movie plot. I remember thinking how good it felt to breathe clean pine-scented air. 3 hours in, the woods went silent, completely, like someone had hit mute. No wind, no birds, no insects. The trail became muddy and hard to follow, like it hadn't been walked on in years. Around noon, we stumbled on a crumbling wooden shelter that wasn't marked on any of our maps. Evie had nearly devoured it, but you could still see it had once been used by hikers. Inside was nothing. No gear, no sleeping bag, just old graffiti etched into the wood. We continued to explore the crumbling wooden shelter, but soon we moved on. That's when things started to get wrong. The trail had narrowed until it was practically swallowed by trees. The forest changed, tighter and darker. Trees leaned in as if listening. The fog rolled in thick and low. We pulled out our compass. North kept shifting. No matter how we turned, it seemed to spin. It didn't take long to realize we were lost. Matt suggested we backtrack, but when we turned around, the path was gone. Just moss and dirt and trees that all looked the same. We started marking trees with a knife, an X every 100 feet. Within 20 minutes, we saw an X ahead of us, not behind. Something was playing tricks on us. That night, we made camp on flat ground, but neither of us slept. We knew we were lost, and we were running in circles in this dense, creepy forest. At about 2:15, I heard the first sound: a chain dragging through leaves, rhythmic, close, then whispering, soft, frantic. I thought it was Matt at first, but he was still, eyes open wide with terror. The whispering continued, circling our tent, brushing against the fabric. Then both of us heard a voice, very clear. It was a clear female voice, but what she was saying, we could not make sense of it, because those were not words. That was some kind of like chants. Some mumbling words in a rhythmic tune. We could not understand what was happening, but one thing was for sure: we both were completely terrified. That woman's voice continued to come, sounding sometimes that it was just right outside our tent, and sometimes that it was at a very far distance. There were rhythmic chants, but we could not make sense of any words. I froze, didn't dare to move, and Matt was also completely terrified. After some time, the chain stopped. Once again, the whole creepy forest went into complete silence. When the sun finally came up, we found footprints, bare, small, almost like a small child, around our tent. No other tents or people anywhere nearby. We both talked to each other, trying to make sense of what happened last night. But it only creeped us further. So we kept walking that day, The compass now spun like a roulette wheel. Our GPS was dead. Phones were dead. We were hiking blindly. That's when Matt started acting strangely. He kept pausing mid-step, looking over his shoulder, like he was expecting someone. He whispered things like, "She's still following us." Or sometimes he would just say, "We shouldn't have come here. She is right behind us." Whenever I turned around and looked around in the forest, I found absolutely no one. Then just before dusk, we saw a girl standing maybe 100 feet away, pale, still, wearing a thin white dress. She was barefoot. Matt shouted, but she didn't respond. When we blinked, she was gone. We started running in panic. We did not understand what was happening, and we were just running blindly through that thick, dense forest. The deeper we went, the less real everything felt. Trees twisted unnaturally. The air buzzed like static. Time stopped making sense. The second night, we were completely exhausted. By walking the entire day into the forest and also completely exhausted from the horrifying experiences that we have had. So we decided to camp. I was not too tired to continue. So the moment we set camp, I decided to go sleep. That night, I had a horrifying dream. I was in our tent, but I couldn't see Matt. The tent was zipped closed, but something was moving outside, scratching. A long, slow scratch down the tent's nylon wall, then breathing, very raspy and wet. A hand pressed against the wall from the outside, not just any hand. It had long fingers, blackened nails. I woke up screaming. Matt hadn't slept at all. He looked pale, unblinking. "She was here," he whispered. I tried to calm him down, but the reality was that I myself was not calm enough. We started hearing noises once again. Every now and then, we'd hear a faint laughter, not friendly but mocking, sometimes behind us, sometimes ahead of us. We tried ignoring it, but it always returned. At one point, we saw lights, flickering like flashlight through the trees. We thought maybe a ranger crew, a rescue team. We started yelling. The lights turned off. Once again, everything felt dead quiet. Everything that was happening around us has completely stopped to make any sense. We could not understand at all what ghost or spirit or whatever this thing is. We spent the night in complete terror. None of us was able to sleep again. Finally, the next day we got up, and once again we inspected around the tent. Once again we saw multiple footprints, very clearly. I said to Matt, "We're not gonna spend another night in this forest, otherwise we might not be able to go back home alive." So we packed up and started moving ahead. This time we decided to stay in line and completely try to map out the ways we are going. After about an hour of walking, we saw another shelter, another small, rotten shelter. This time we did not dare to go inside the shelter, as we were already very terrified of whatever was following us. So we decided to continue, marking the shelter as a milestone. The whole day after walking through the forest and trying to survive, finally, once again, the dusk was upon us. We could not help but stay in the forest and for another night, and this time many things changed. Once again we found a small place to camp. We started gathering woods to light a fire, and we also started gathering some wooden sticks to keep inside the tent in case something comes this time again. That night felt much calmer than the previous ones. Maybe it was because that we have become accustomed to this forest life. Matt and I had our dinner. We had hunted some birds and also found a nest where we found a couple eggs. So we had our dinner and we went to sleep. This time, everything was feeling less dense, and I quickly went to sleep. It started with a dream, me walking through water, waist deep in total darkness. I could hear chains rattling above, but when I looked up, there was no sky, just more trees upside down, hanging like chandeliers. This was a very twisted dream. Immediately, I woke up due to the horror, and I saw Matt was gone. I shouted his name. Nothing. I grabbed my flashlight and went into the forest. I continued to scream for his name. Then I saw him, kneeling by a tree, speaking to someone who wasn't there. I snuck closer and heard him whisper, "Okay, just one more step." He turned and looked at me. His face was totally blank, not angry, not scared, just completely empty. I yelled his name very loud. "Snap out of it," I said. He blinked, then, as if walking from a trance, ran into the trees full speed. He was running too fast. I tried to chase after him, but it was very difficult for me to run and chase him in that dense forest. And very soon I realized that the forest had swallowed him. I could not find any trace of Matt. Every time I thought I saw his figure, it vanished between trunks. I kept running until I collapsed, chest burning. I never found him. That night, after this horrifying experience, I went back to my tent and locked myself inside. I tried chanting some things that I have heard at church, but nothing made any difference. I spent that night in terror, and the next day I got up and I decided that no matter what happens, I'm gonna make it out of this forest alive. I looked at my map, also trying to make sense about where we might be. As my compass was still not working, I had no sense, but somehow I knew from where we came, so I continued in the opposite direction, and this time I was trying to move faster. After about 6 to 7 hours of continuously walking, I was exhausted, but then to my surprise, I saw a fire road. I ran towards this road as my heart completely filled up with joy. This meant that somebody might come. I sat at the corner of the road, waiting for help to arrive. Not long after, I saw a forest ranger. He had found me, and he radioed for help immediately. I was treated for exhaustion and mild hypothermia. When I asked if they found my friend, they said no one else had been reported missing in the park that weekend. I filed the report anyways. Search and rescue launched a 4-day operation. Drones, dogs, helicopters. No trace. Not a footprint. Not a scrap of cloth. Nothing. Matt just completely vanished into that forest without a trace. The official's report says Matt wandered off and likely fell or succumbed to exposure. But that doesn't explain the shelter that didn't exist, or the footprints or the things that whispered in our tent. I had hoped that once I was out, the haunting would stop. But even in the city, strange things followed. I began hearing whispers through white noise. At home, in the car radio, even once through my laptop speaker, which no audio was playing. I started seeing a figure briefly, always in reflective surface, standing still, watching me. Same pale dress, same empty eyes. One night, I woke up to find muddy footprints, small childlike, on the floor of my apartment. My windows were locked, door bolted, but they led from my living room to my bed. Sleep hasn't come easy since. They say the mind creates stories to cope with trauma. But what if the story is real, and the trauma is what we are left with after surviving it? Whatever is in those woods, it doesn't care about maps or cell signals. It watches, it follows, and it waits. If you ever hike in Shenandoah, and you find a shelter that isn't on a map, turn around. And if you hear something whisper in the dark, don't listen, don't answer. Because once you acknowledge it, it doesn't go away. So there we are with our first really horrifying encounter. This has really been a very chilling story. Now let's move on to our second story. I moved to Chicago in early 2020 for a new job at a mid-sized design firm headquartered in an old Art Deco building. It wasn't glamorous, but it had character. The kind of place with brass elevators and creaking floors that remind you of the past. My role involved late hours, and I quickly got used to staying behind after everyone left, enjoying the eerie silence that blanketed the office after 7 p.m. Our firm occupied floor 9 through 11, but the 10th was under renovation. That's what they told us. It had been locked off since I joined. Sometimes, walking to the 9th floor from the stairwell, I thought I heard noises above, shuffling, dragging sounds. Sometimes, that sharp click of heel. But when I asked maintenance, they shrugged it off. Pipes, old vents, rats, maybe. 2 months in, I started noticing things in the office. Emails sent from my account that I didn't write. Drafts I didn't open, being edited late at night. One night, I found my desk drawer open with a sticky note that simply read 11:44. I checked my phone. After a while, 11:44. The next night, I stayed later than usual, almost daring whatever it was to show itself. At exactly 11:44 at night, the office lights dimmed, just for a second, and then I heard footsteps above. Heavy, deliberate. I reported it to security. They checked the logs. No one else had scanned into the building after 9 p.m. Cameras showed nothing. Not even me, apparently. They blamed a technical issue. A week later, my coworker Dana mentioned she was working late too and heard someone whispering in the break room when she was the only one there. Another colleague, Chris, said once his screen flickered and showed a floor plan he didn't recognize, a blueprint labeled floor 10B. That night, I stayed again. This time, I took the stairwell to the 10th floor. The door, usually locked, was ajar. I shouldn't have gone in. The floor was unfinished. Dust, scattered insulation, old cubicles half assembled, and cold freezing, like the AC had been turned to max. I walked slowly, flashlight in hand, then I saw her. A woman standing at the far end of the hall, facing the wall. Pale, hair down to her waist, dressed in what looked like an office uniform, skirt torn, heels missing. She didn't move. I stepped back, my lights flickered, and as she turned, no eyes, just deep, dark hollows. Her mouth opened unnaturally wide, like her jaw had been dislocated. And then she screamed. Not just sound, a vibration. My chest tightened. I dropped the flashlight as blood rushed through my heart. When I scrambled to pick it up, she was gone. I ran down the stairs, skipped floors, didn't stop until I hit the street. I called my manager the next morning and said I was working remotely until further notice. But things followed. Files on my computer kept disappearing. I heard footsteps in the hallway at night. My doorbell would ring at 11:44, but no one would be there. I eventually learned unofficially that the 10th floor had once been home to an HR rep named Claire, who disappeared in the 90s. They said she worked late, was last seen at 11:44. Nobody was ever found. This is what I could gather from an old office right beside our building that had been running for decades. I'm not sure if it's true, but that's the story that I heard. I left the job 6 weeks later, and I returned to my hometown. This was another mysterious and very scary incident. Although we did not get the details on what really happened and if this was the only incidents that had happened with him, it would also be interesting to know what other things had happened with other people in that building, or maybe something that has happened after that incident. But nonetheless, this was our second and last story of this episode. Do write in the comments what you think about this office building, and also if somebody knows what building it really is and what had happened in that building. So this is it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see us in our next episode. Until then, stay tuned, subscribe the channel, like the video, and don't forget to leave your comments down below. Thank you for watching. Until next time.